to or welcome back to my channel, and thank you very much for joining me here again today. Last week we spoke about the incredibly heinous crime of the Throb nightclub murders, and if you haven't seen that, I will link it up here. But that case was based on a plan that these criminals thought may work in order to get more money to their club. However, this plan went drastically wrong. But for today's case, it was actually suggested to me, and when I was busy researching it, I was busy looking up information and I came across a video, and I happened to watch the video and I saw what happened to this person, and I kind of had to step back and stop and go about my day and then come back to the case later, because I find this case so disturbing because of the availability of information, videos, and data about this person online. And I say this in the sense because there was an Instagram profile, a Facebook profile, a video, and you get to learn so much about people looking through certain things. And I just think that it was more disturbing seeing what happened to them once you've seen the person live their life. But for today, we are going to talk about the case of Ludi Vink or Ludi Vink. And he was a South African man who was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And possibly with some incredible aim and incredible happenstance, sadly his life was taken too soon. So with that being said, thank you very much for the suggestion, and let's get into today's case.
Intended for mature audiences
Today
only.
we're heading over to an area called Alberton, which is in the Gauteng province of South Africa. Here in Alberton is a pub called Mitzi's Pub. And Mitzi's Pub seemed to be a biker's cove or a little bit rough around the edges. Not the place itself, but maybe some of the patrons that attended there. But I guess you could say that with any pub. But in this pub was obviously a bar, some pool tables, a dancing area, and some open space. And in February of 2017, one of South Africa's hottest months and the peak of summer, Ludi, who was born in South Africa on the 19th of May 1986, was back from Australia by himself to visit his mother, Ludi Vink. Ludi was a well-known hairdresser in Alberton, and Ludi, like I said, was back from Australia because he was engaged to a lady from Australia named Claire Bodle. Ludi was around 30 years old at the time of this tragedy, and by a lot of people he was known as a beautiful and kind soul. Ludi was known as an adventurer who would travel all over the world, and he was also known as a foodie, a surfer, and an artist. He would enjoy being outside, being completely with nature, away from all modern technology. He enjoyed being outside in nature and to experience other cultures and the food that they enjoyed as well. His kindness and gentle nature was obvious in all that he enjoyed and how he lived his life. And I think traveling and eating from other cultures' foods or national dishes or even their favorite dishes is a lifestyle that I think a lot of us would be jealous and would love to enjoy. However, feeling a bit of the nightlife, feeling a bit of wanting to go out a bit, Ludi and actually his mom, Dunley, went out to Mitzi's bar at around 2 p.m. Here they are busy having a few drinks, they are enjoying themselves, they play a bit of pool, they socialize, they talk to a lot of people. And of course, at a bar, you generally have a few drunk people or a few people who may be under the weather. And sometimes fights do break out, just as it happened to happen here. And the fight got quite hectic, fists and spit were flying, and it happened to be a full pub brawl. So Ludi, having the nature that he had, being kind and compassionate, he did try to bring a lot of people just away from the fight so that they weren't in the crossfires of these flying fists. But then Ludi also tried to step up and stop this one huge man of fighting more and to try and stop the chaos from happening. Now, when I describe the next scene, like I said, I saw a video. I'm not going to put it in this video. But like I said, the video is quite graphic and you see exactly what Ludi's final moments were. But what happened to Ludi next was so bizarre. And like I said in the intro, it was the most unfathomable happenstance that I've ever seen. And I say this because of the bizarre way that Ludi was injured and then sadly passed away. So let's get into what happened exactly. So Ludi was at the bar, a fight breaks out. Ludi then tries to usher people away. He also then tries to approach this bigger man to try and stop the fight from happening and just to like calm down. This is really not worth fighting over. So when Ludi approached this bigger guy, there were two pool tables next to him. The bigger guy was at one of the pool tables on the one side, and Ludi approached him from the other side coming towards him. And I say this guy was bigger because he was bigger in size compared to Ludi. He was taller and he had a bit more meat on him. Ludi was quite slim built and he was very muscular. So Ludi then tries to grab the attention of this bigger man, and he kind of just pulls his t-shirt. He wasn't doing anything hectic. He just touched him and just braced him to kind of just be like, calm down. And the bigger man kind of shrugs Ludi off. Ludi then stumbles back a tiny bit, but Ludi then goes forward again to try and just say, like, calm down. But in the same moment that Ludi was heading forward, this bigger guy then turns to the side, picks up a pool cue, and kind of just jabs it at Ludi. Ludi then takes full impact straight into one of his eyes, and it was kind of like slow motion that he just fell to the floor and was completely motionless. There was no movement from him at all, with this pool cue sticking out of his face. So now Ludi was lying flat on his back, pool cue is sticking out of his eye, and another man in the video comes running towards Ludi. He then panics over the body, you can see him panicking, and he then takes the pool cue and pulls it out of his eye. And I mean, I'm no paramedic. I only did one first aid course like 5 years ago. And I don't think you're supposed to pull objects out of big injuries. But this guy did. He pulled it out and he tried to see if Ludi was moving. An ambulance was called and Ludi was rushed to the hospital. But the bigger guy who did this to Ludi and just thrusted the pool cube into his eye, he looked at him when this happened and he just walked away. There seemed to be no emotional response at all. So like I said, Ludi Vink was then taken to hospital where sadly he was pronounced brain dead a couple of days after he arrived. Ludi was injured on the 22nd of February 2017 and his fiancée Claire, who was 25 at the time, landed in Joburg on Thursday, the 24th of February, just in time to say goodbye when they turned off the machines. And she said, quote, "Today I say goodbye to the love of my life, my best friend, my soulmate. I am so glad I got to hold you and kiss you one more time." End quote. And I just find this case so sad. And just reading the words that his mom and his fiancé had to say is just absolutely gut-wrenching. And just like we spoke about a couple of videos ago with Cole Scooby, remember he was a case of mistaken identity in a pub brawl as well. But literally, incidents like this happen so quickly. And Ludi's mom and his fiance were obviously taken so aback. And like I said in the beginning, remember, Dunley, Ludi's mom, was apparently there at the time as well. So imagine the trauma that his mom must have felt seeing this, probably being ushered away from the pool tables by her son to protect her, him then going in to try and stop the fight, to try and see what he could do to stop this fight, and then being murdered right in front of her. But soon after Ludi's passing, his mom did post on Facebook and she said, quote, "My heart is ripped out, my soul in pain. My darling, beautiful, kind son, Ludi, so pointlessly and savagely ripped from me. Today, 9 a.m., we say our last goodbyes. Every part of me is in pain." End quote. So let's head back now to this guy who I described earlier as thrusting the pool cue into Ludi's eye. So this man, 2 days after this whole pub brawl incident and probably after he heard the passing of Ludi, handed himself into police. The suspect handed himself into police and was then handed bail of only 5,000 rand. And then the case was postponed to the 20th of April 2017. So remember, Ludi passed on the 24th of February 2017. The case was then happened 2 months later. So while I assume the prosecutors and the defense were gathering their evidence and this man was released, a memorial service was held for Ludi. And also a lot of people were raising funds for Claire, his fiancée, but she said that she doesn't want the money. She rather wants it to go towards his funeral that Ludi's mother, father, and sibling may need. But Ludi was cremated, and Claire would take some of Ludi's ashes back to Australia with her, while the rest will be scattered in Limpopo, where he camped with his dad the weekend before he was murdered. Now let's get back into talking about the suspect. Now I want to talk about the video because I watched it twice, and only twice. And the only reason that I watched it again was because of the actions of this man and the moment that he pushed the pool cue. And watching this video, it really seems as though there was such little effort. And I do assume that he didn't mean to hit Ludi in the eye directly with this pool cue. However, picking this piece of wood up and moving it towards someone, you know you're going to try and hurt them. Why else would you pick up a supposed weapon or use this piece of wood as a weapon? But the movement of this man was so emotionless, so effortless, and it just happened to hit Ludi in the exact spot that ended up killing him. So I do think the trial will be incredibly interesting because of this video and whether or not they find him guilty on murder 1 or manslaughter or what he will be sentenced for. And I say will be interesting because we are still waiting for the trial to happen. On the 6th of June 2018, Daniel Jacobus Olivier and his son Keith were standing trial for the murder of Ludi Vink. Daniel was a well-known debt collector in Alberton, and when the trial actually started to take place, you would assume that back in April of 2017 that the case would be a done deal because there's clear video evidence that this man, the one standing in front of you in trial, thrusted this pool cue into Ludi's eye. But we are still waiting for enough evidence to be collected by the South African police. And from reading, it seemed that a lot of things just happened to go wrong in this trial. Like the judge at the time when the trial happened became quite ill, so the trial then had to be postponed and postponed. And then COVID hit, but COVID only happened 2 years later. So the time period is quite unclear of what happened. However, when police and prosecutors and the defense does eventually collect enough evidence, it seems as though the trial will continue this year in October, so next month. But now I want to mention the mom again, Dunley, because remember I said that she was in the pub at the time that this happened to Ludi. So there was an eyewitness, and she tells it step by step of what happened that night. The eyewitness said that she saw Daniel and his wife seated at the bar, and she and Ludi then played pool from 2 p.m., but the accused only came in later that day. Ludi's mom then said that she sat with the owner of the pub when Daniel then called her over. She said that a fight then broke out between other patrons in the bar, but at first Daniel was not a part of this fight, and he was not a part of the initiation. According to Ludi's mom, Daniel Olivier and his wife then left the bar and went to sit in their car, which was parked across the entrance of the bar. She then said that a second car entered the parking lot, stopped next to Daniel's vehicle, and then she saw that Daniel and the other people in the other car got out of their car and walked into the pub. She then saw the owner being dragged by the arms, and according to her, she looked like he was being beaten up. Dunley then said that it went very quickly and that Ludi went up to talk to some people, and the next thing that she knew, a pool cue was in Ludi's eye. Ludi's mom then said that the person that ran over to Ludi when he was lying motionless on the floor was actually Keith, Daniel's son, and he was absolutely shocked and terrified of what his father had just done, and he was the one that pulled the pool cue out. But like we said, this case has been postponed, and hopefully Ludi's family and Ludi can get the justice that he deserves. And this case is so unbelievable and so senseless. But I do definitely think that we should recap this if the trial does continue in October, because I would love to know the outcome and what the judge finds Daniel guilty of. Both Daniel and Keith are on trial. I do assume that Keith's sentencing may be a bit less than Daniel's, but who knows? Daniel was actually let off in October of 2017, and they closed the case on Ludi at the time because they said that there wasn't enough evidence, and that's why possibly the case is taking so long to resume, because they are gathering as much evidence as they can. But let me know what you think of this case down below. I hope that you're all staying incredibly safe out there. Thank you for all your kind messages and support, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.